Hello, I'm Brad Olsen, director of Off the Tracks, a documentary about the disruption caused by Final Cut Pro 10.
I know there were some people that shifted off to other platforms, but I also saw a lot of people seeing the potential.
The world is moving away from videotape and moving entirely into a digital environment.
It's the democratization of video, what Apple did with desktop publishing, they're trying to do with video.
If you're a creative person and you want to tell a story, you have everything it takes to tell a story.
There's this question that I've seen floating around over the last few years, which is what types of projects is Final Cut Pro 10 best suited for? Some people assume that because Final Cut Pro 10 is a simple application, at least it appears to be on the surface, that it's best to use it on simple projects. In turn, larger projects should be handled by more complicated software. Based off of my own experience, this is a fallacy. Over the last decade or so, I've worked on a variety of projects, from reality TV shows to documentaries to independent feature films. I'm very familiar with large projects and those types of workflows. To do these jobs, I've used a variety of different tools. Currently, I have these editing applications installed on my computer. Which tool I'm using is determined by the job and who I'm working with. But if I have the choice, Final Cut Pro 10 is always my go-to application for any project, large or small. Final Cut is uniquely positioned, offering a feature set that separates it from the competition. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some key features in Final Cut, starting with some basic ones, the film strip view and the skimmer. This actually comes to us from iMovie. I know we hear the complaint about Final Cut Pro 10 being some kind of glorified iMovie, but these design concepts were truly inspired. I refer to the event that inspired these features as the blue shark moment. The first time I heard about this was when Steve Jobs introduced iMovie 08.
This one's really interesting. Let me tell you the story behind the new iMovie 08.
I remember him talking about a certain engineer who came back from vacation and didn't think Final Cut was good enough to sort through his underwater footage.
This really brilliant engineer happens to know Final Cut Pro through and through, and so he got out Final Cut Pro. Couldn't do it. So he couldn't find a way to spend 20, 30 minutes and make a great 5-minute movie and share it on the web, say. So he invented one.
I was shocked to hear Steve say that Final Cut wasn't good enough. A decade later, I would find myself interviewing that particular engineer for my documentary. It was iMovie 08, Steve Jobs introduced it, and he tells the story. Is that you?
That was me. That was me.
You. And what was missing in Final Cut Pro?
We went on a great white shark cage diving trip. My husband had just gotten his first HD camera, and we knew we were going to be in the water shooting. We're going to come back hours and hours of footage with lots and lots of clips and sharks interspersed. And the traditional method of doing that is open up clip 1, run the scrubber across, blue shark, blue shark. What would be a better way to do that? Well, why not be able to just look at the frames of the video, have it all done out as film strips. And then when you've got the film strips, instead of having to click and drag, just if you're moving the cursor around, that was where skimming came from. And then once you had that skimming, then it just made sense to just kind of click and select a range, kind of like you would do with text, and copy and paste. And it made for this really quick way of putting things together. And we showed it to Steve, and within 5 minutes of starting the demo, he kind of turned and looked and said, that's the next iMovie.
What I realized back in 2007 was that Final Cut was going to have to incorporate features from iMovie, but I guess I was the only one that obsessed with editing software. In Final Cut's browser, we can see the film strip at the top of the page when in list view mode. But when we switch to the film strip view, suddenly all the media is represented visually as thumbnails. Zooming out allows more clips to fill the browser. I love using the skimmer in the browser. The media comes to life, and it's a fast way to find a specific moment or look. I also use the skimmer in the timeline, where it makes trimming quick and easy. If you're a new user, you might find the skimmer to be a bit overwhelming. I was toggling it on and off all the time when I first started out, but over the years I've become more and more accustomed to it. It actually reminds me of something I read about in Walter Murch's book, In the Blink of an Eye. He reminisced about editing on film and how when he rewound or fast-forwarded, all the film frames would flash through on the screen. He compares this to digital systems where scrubbing through is more like a rock skipping across a pond, only sampling frames at the system's frame rate. While we haven't achieved the exact same thing in digital that we have in film, I believe skimming takes us a step closer to what Walter was talking about. In his book, Walter says, "I'm always amazed at how perceptive the human eye is, even at those high speeds at detecting tiny inflections of looks and expressions and action." In the transition to digital technology, making movies no longer costs what it once did. While film and tape took up more physical space, the amount of digital media that we're capturing has increased exponentially. Wading through all this material necessitates the development of better organizational tools. Let's take a look at how Final Cut Pro X addresses this challenge. Starting with ratings, you can favorite or reject clips or portions of clips, select a range, rate it, and filter by those ratings in the browser. This is a quick way to hide clutter. Next, we have keywords. Keywords allow you to identify the content of your clips with tags. Keywords can be anything like locations, people, objects, the type of shot, or any description that makes sense to you. And just like ratings, keywords can be applied to a specific range. Keywords are grouped into collections so your clips can be sorted automatically. You can think of it as a more powerful version of subclipping. Taking these concepts to another level, you can combine a variety of parameters in a smart search. It's like an advanced Google search meeting a sophisticated spreadsheet or database. Saving these searches creates a new smart collection. All of this makes finding the right clip so much easier. There's a lot of potential in the foundation Apple's built with these tools. I imagine machine learning will further automate these organizational tasks, saving editors more time in the future. Probably the biggest feature that sets Final Cut Pro X apart from traditional editing software is the magnetic timeline. The magnetic timeline does have a lot of critics. And when you hear about the change over to Final Cut Pro X, this is what people are referring to. Traditional editing software borrows concepts from film and tape paradigms, and this leads to inherent limitations. These older systems are plagued with issues like clip collisions, accidental overwrites, or losing sync. And a lot of thought has to go into track management on the part of the editor to avoid these problems.
Everything kind of up through Final Cut 7 and a bunch of the other systems that are out there were really all based on the tape metaphor. Source, record, and very much individual tracks that are all separate, completely independent. And as people would work on a project, it became much easier to mess it up when you change something. If you had a hour-long project, people didn't want to do anything at the beginning of the project because it would change something 20 minutes downstream or 10 minutes downstream that you wouldn't know that it was going to mess up. You'd have to run down and verify that everything stayed in place. And so things just felt fragile.
I see traditional track-based systems as tools designed for technicians. And when I look at what Apple did with abandoning tracks and flipping the paradigm, I believe they created tools that enable the storyteller. For example, ripple edits, which can be problematic in older systems, are now the default. Rather than colliding or overwriting, clips bump out of the way of each other, and reordering clips is a breeze. Connecting clips to a primary storyline allows vertical relationships to be respected. A title, cutaway, sound effect, or music cue has a relationship to content in the main edit. By attaching these clips together, the editor's intent is encoded on the timeline. I really appreciate the time and effort Apple put into visual feedback in the timeline. Whether it's trimming an edit, slipping a clip, or rearranging clips, the application's responsiveness and visual indicators make me feel more confident in what I'm doing.
We spend a lot of time trying to make every interaction you do tell you what it is that you're doing, confirm to you what it is that you're doing. If you have a bunch of clips on this side of your timeline and you've got this clip that you're adjusting here and you're making this clip longer in this direction, the gesture you're doing is moving this way, so intuitively you would expect everything to move that way. There's other feedback in the timeline, little things like if you are slipping a clip, when we drag the clip to the left and right, we move the thumbnails to the left and right and the waveform to the left and right. So you feel like you're moving the content of that clip within its little clip boundary. Or you may just be dragging a clip, but we were thinking, how do we represent the past, the present, and the future of that action and be able to move between those three states before you commit. And you'll see it, like you'll drag a clip between two other clips, and if you wait just a beat, then all of a sudden all the clips move down and this little blue area where your new clip is going to go appears.
I remember when the magnetic timeline finally clicked for me. I was still finishing up projects in Final Cut Pro 7, and thanks to the visual feedback in 10, I actually became more comfortable doing advanced editing techniques. 7 had all these cryptic indicators, and I never was quite sure what was going to happen when I let go of the mouse. But because I knew what was going to happen, after using 10, I came back to 7, and I was more confident that it would perform the correct operation.
Hopefully, most people don't notice any of these things in the software at all. Hopefully, they just feel good when they're using the software, or they just feel like they know what just happened.
This isn't just about making editing easier to learn or understand. Good visual feedback enables creativity. It helps with decision-making processes. It's a big reason why I prefer Final Cut Pro 10 over other tools. Another evolution beyond traditional systems is roles. Video and audio clips are assigned to a role to identify what they are. This is especially beneficial for audio. After assigning roles to audio clips, they automatically arrange themselves in the timeline. And because individual audio channels are rolled into a clip, at first glance a Final Cut Pro 10 timeline may look simpler than a track-based timeline. But individual audio channels can be revealed in the timeline, edited, and turned off or on. You can also automatically arrange audio clips into lanes, change the stacking order of roles, and focus on a specific role to make audio editing easier. When you need the complexity, it's always there. But I prefer letting the application manage that complexity for me so I can get on with my work. Roles allow you to export sophisticated multi-track QuickTimes or audio stems. As someone who has edited many indie features, I'm frequently asked to provide specific deliverables for distribution. Unlike other systems, I don't have to manage my clips on specific tracks or mute them or turn them on or off. The software does the majority of that work for me. I can even save export presets for future use.
The fact that you now have the roles abilities to switch roles, that's based on metadata. Is this a sound effect? Is this music? Is this dialogue? Is this natural? Or is it a voiceover? The fact that you have the roles to be able to switch that both in color and position and size is all metadata speed. That's a time machine because it's going to take less time to sort through that and identify what you have to do. Plus you can quickly, and it's the fastest way to export with and without sound or VO or music, and people need different outputs for different reasons, and you don't want to have to mute and unmute things manually, which is how people do it still. There's thousands of sad assistant editors muting and unmuting tracks trying to figure this out so they can do an export for some, temp mix or some VFX spotting session, and it's like Final Cut makes that instant.
Speaking of saving time, because Apple makes the hardware and the software, Final Cut Pro 10 is optimized to run on the Mac. We can talk about faster export or render times, but what this really means to me in practice is that I'm less stressed about impending deadlines and have more time to be creative. In fact, it isn't the processing speed of the application alone, but the cumulative effect of all of these types of features combined that saves me time, makes me happy, and proves that Final Cut Pro 10 is capable of any job I throw at it.
When I talk to editors that are like on the fence, right? And they're thinking, well, I don't know, I see you're using that, but that's really not for me. One of the things that I like to tell them is this. Look, Final Cut 10 solves problems for editors that you don't even know you have yet.
I hope this has been insightful. What do you like about Final Cut Pro 10? What improvements would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.